Hello everybody. Next up we play host to Everton. It might be an idea to set your alarm clocks for this one, having first taken the precaution of making sure that they've taken heed of the change from BST to GMT that'll take place overnight. You'll need that extra hour as kick-off is at 1 PM on Sunday. This is a consequence of Greater Manchester Police moving the corporate event formerly known as the Manchester Derby to 3:30 PM, meaning that everyone else has to kick off earlier to give Sky lots more time to fawn over two of their darling clubs. Lots of engineering works on C2C and Greater Anglia, so be prepared for replacement buses. So Everton then. Well, they stayed up by the skin of their teeth last season. The fixture list couldn't have been kinder, really. There are worse teams than Bournemouth at home to have for your last game of the season. Their 1-0 win was needed in the end, as Leicester's victory over us would have meant relegation for the Toffees had they drawn or lost. They are relying on the time-honoured hoping there are 3 teams worse than us tactic at the moment. This is a ploy that has seen them win 2, drawn 1 and lose 6 so far, leaving them on 7 points from the 9 they've played, with Luton on 5 points, Burnley on 4, Bournemouth on 2, and Sheffield United on 1, the only teams below them. There's also a 3-point gap between them and both Forest and Brentford, who both have 10 points above them. They will of course be in the midst of dealing with the death of Bill Kenwright this week. Although he'd long ceased to be the majority shareholder in the club, I believe he was down to some 2% at the time of his passing, he retained the chairmanship, a decision that left him, perhaps unfairly, acting as a focal point for the ire of those supporters unhappy with the state of the club in recent years. However, unlike the club's actual owners, he had been a lifelong Evertonian, and their recent woes, of which more shortly, will have hurt. It was he who appointed David Moyes back in the day, giving them their best spell in quite some time. The finances left behind are a bit of a mess, to be honest. The new station at Bramley Dock has been a drain on resources, and the Premier League has opened up an inquiry into alleged financial fair play rule breaches. Now, the papers have been full of headlines of a 12-point deduction. You'd be forgiven for thinking that the hearings have been done and dusted, but at this stage it's just the penalty that might be sought in the event that they're actually found guilty. Things aren't being helped by the protracted sale of the club by Farhad Moshiri. The proposed £550 million plus takeover by American investment company 777 Partners is currently crawling through the regulatory process to ensure that the new owners are fit to buy the club. Whilst the approval process can be glacial, look how long it took to decide that Newcastle's owners hadn't actually murdered that many journalists, for example. 777 haven't really helped themselves. Part of the latest procedure requires prospective buyers to submit audited financial accounts for review by the Financial Conduct Authority. It appears that 777 haven't done this so far, a failure which has prompted speculation that all is not well with the deal. Such talk has of course been pooh-poohed by those involved, but that won't stop Toffee supporters from fretting more and more the longer the books are missing from FCA's HQ in Stratford. There is a warning precedent here. It seems like an age ago, but they've already had one deal collapse this season. A proposed £190 million investment from another US concern called MSP went belly up back in August. The financial state of the club is perhaps reflected by the transfer balance sheet, which saw £82.8 million come in over the summer, of which only £38.7 million was spent. Last Saturday's fall guy in the latest Liverpool/PGMOL love-in, Ashley Young, was a free transfer arrival from Villa this summer. It seems now he's at the veteran stage of his career, and being in possession of a resale value akin to that of a signed photo of Philip Schofield, he has a fresh attitude to playing in the lower regions of the Premier League. In the past, he once turned down a move to the Bowling to avoid having to play in a relegation battle. Funny how flexible principles can be when nobody else wants to sign you. He will of course be unavailable for selection anyway, having been the latest victim of the dishonest officiating that our finest reserve for their matches at Anfield. They paid out £12 million to Sporting in return for Portuguese under-20 international Youssef Chamiti. At the age of 19, one suspects that the original plan may not have involved throwing him straight into the deep end of Premier League life, but he has already made 3 league appearances, as Everton's forward has struggled with both form and injury. Portuguese striker Beto had a bright start to his Everton career, coming on at half-time as the Toffeemen was struggling to equalise in the League Cup at Doncaster. He netted his first for the club as they came from behind to avoid what would have been an ignominious exit. He's found things a little bit more difficult in the league, however, and has failed to score in any of the 5 matches since he featured in since his debut. Everton's other scorer at the keepmoat that night was Dutchman Arno Danjuma. He's on a season-long loan, something that should have actually happened back in January, only for the deal to be hijacked by Spurs at the last minute. Having returned to parent club Villarreal in the summer, Everton swallowed their pride and signed the player this summer instead. The other loan signing was Jack Harrison, who freakishly scored a hat-trick at the Olympic a couple of seasons ago in our equally freakish 3-2 home defeat to Leeds. There's not many players who can say that their senior debut came in a 7-0 defeat at Yankee Stadium. Well, not many outside baseball anyway. However, having spent his early career at New York City, that's exactly what happened, as they conceded a hatful to local rivals New York Fizzy Drinks. Harrison arrived on loan from Leeds on their relegation, and the further loan spell on Merseyside seems to be a case of hedging his bets. Let's move on, shall we, to the wild and wacky world of association football. And I'm even more indebted than usual to the beautiful Daisy for picking up on the story of the Borussia Dortmund team coach. That's the wheeled conveyance of transport rather than ex-hammer Edin Terzic. It seems that the vehicle found itself up the coast in time, parked at a 90-degree angle across half a dozen car parking spaces. This attracted the interest of the local community support officer, who promptly stuck a ticket on the vehicle, an action that honestly had nothing to do with the previous night's result. Honest, Gov. Elsewhere, sur le continent, it was trebles all around in Zurich as Swiss prosecutors finally dropped their investigations into FIFA President Gianni Infantino after he'd held a secret meeting with the Swiss Attorney General. Both he and FIFA were over the moon at the decision. However, someone in FIFA's press office really needs their head examined if they think the world is going to listen to a statement that refers to FIFA as a clean, well-run and robust organisation which operates in accordance with the highest ethical standards. Well, without rolling about laughing. I bet that one's playing well in Saudi Arabia as they plan for a World Cup they're just about to be handed on a plate. Let's move on to us then, and it was a bit depressing on Thursday, really, wasn't it? The problem was that we started with the wrong 11. Now, I appreciate some of those changes were enforced. I mean, Fabianski and Soufal were both hors de combat, for example. However, given the quality of the opposition, this was one to throw a bit of resource at. Instead, we started with Ings up front, and he's a player clearly lacking in confidence. And it looked like the equivalent of football euthanasia when he was finally put out of our misery just short of the hour. We were short on the basics. Some of the passing was embarrassing, and the failure to close players down on the edge of the box was, well, it's something you teach at junior school level. The bright side? Well, Paquetá's goal wasn't bad, was it? And it nearly, but not quite, erased the memory of all the times he gave the ball away. Let's hope lessons are learned and we stick out a proper first 11 in the return fixture in a couple of weeks. On the injury front, the main doubt is Soufal, who didn't travel to Greece due to muscular tightness. He's only got a 50-50 chance of starting, which is more than Emerson, who's ruled out through suspension, having breached the 5 yellows before the end of December rule. Other than that, we've got a full deck to play with. So then on to the prediction. Well, I reckon that once you get that losing habit, it becomes a difficult one to shift, and their run's a lot worse than ours has been. I think it's a home win for me this time around. So the £2.50 I was going to spend on a stamp to post all of my bank details to Gianni Infantino, now that FIFA have told us how honest he is, will instead be placed on a wager with Mr. Winston for a 3-1 to us victory. Enjoy the game.